Welcome back to Haven Homestead Podcast, where we learn and grow together on our way to living more sustainable lives. My name is Chris, and this is episode 4 on the Chicken Podcast, part 2. We're going to be talking about housing today. So I'm going to jump right into it and remind you that this is on havenhomestead.com. You can find our show notes, and you can find other interesting facts about the Haven Homestead. So there's a few questions you need to ask yourself when you are thinking about the housing needs for your chickens. First, on the list, first thing you should ask yourself is how many birds do you want? So you need to think about how many eggs are you looking for. Figure that, chickens will lay every other day. Realistically, I know they say a chicken lays 180 or 260 or 300 eggs a year, but I wouldn't take that to the bank. I would plan for every other day, or half as much as they say they will. So if you want to have a dozen eggs a week, then a few hens, maybe 3 hens would probably do that for you. Another question you need to ask yourself is, which breeds are you looking to raise? Are you wanting to raise larger birds like Australorps, or maybe if you're just going for meat birds, like the Cornish cross? So if you want to get a larger breed bird, then you're going to need more room planned in your chicken coop, as to if you're going to get a smaller breed like one of the bantams or a leghorn or a Fayoumi or something like that would need a lot less room. Some other questions you want to think about are, what are your resources? Do you have enough room for a chicken tractor to go pull it around your land or around your yard? Do you have enough room or materials for making your chicken tractor, or are you going to go out and buy all new stuff? Some of the neatest chicken tractors I've seen are made from recycled material. Also, what kind of forage do you have on your land where these chickens are going to run? Are you going to do a free range, a semi-free range, or are you going to have them inside of a coop and run? Or are you going to do a paddock? Or are you going to do a rotational grazing system? These are all questions you need to ask yourself. And if you have any questions on any of the terms that I've mentioned, then Google's your best friend. Also, there's some really good forums on permies.com. So we're going to go right into coop. We're going to start the first. So when I say coop, I mean the house that the chickens live in. There are some things that are important that you have with this coop. One is that it's dry. That's what I found. We live in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, and keeping your coop dry is one of the most important things that I've found for our chickens. Your coop can be fancy. It can look, some people make it look just like their house so it matches, or make it look like a barn, or it can be plain, made out of pallets and recycled plywood and old roofing. But there are some things that it needs to have. It needs to be secure. It needs to be predator proof. I think that you should put your roosts high enough so that the predators can't reach your chickens while they're roosting, because at nighttime is when the predators typically come out, and nighttime is also when the chickens are typically roosting, and when they're roosting they usually don't move, and so they're very easy prey. Another thing you can do is heat your chicken coop. That comes with certain disadvantages. One is expensive to heat a chicken coop unless it's well insulated, but they usually have windows or doors that make it difficult to keep the heat in. Also, you can catch the chicken coop on fire rather easily. There's a lot of dust and small feathers and grass and hay floating around in there, and it can catch on fire and burn your whole coop down, plus lose all your chickens, plus all your buildings close by, if that were the case if it weren't cut early. Another thing you can do is light your chicken coop. We do not light ours. We like to keep our chickens on natural cycle. They lay less in the wintertime because this day's shorter, and that's okay with us. And then they lay more in the summertime, and I think it extends their laying season per chicken longer. It extends how many years they'll lay, I think, if you do it that way. That's just my speculation. We'd like to keep things as natural as possible. Also, it's important to have ventilated, as I mentioned earlier. The ventilation kind of goes against the heating because you need airflow so that it doesn't get stagnant and smelly in there, but it's also important for the chicken's health. Another thing that I think is important with a coop is that it's easy to clean. Our chicken coop I've put off the ground a few inches. There's room for me to walk in the front, and then I can take a pitchfork and scoop the manure out and throw it to the end of the chicken run, where I then let the chickens dig through it, and then I pile it back up and put it over the fence into the compost bin. In the coop is where most people keep their dust baths. Dust baths are important for chickens so that they can bathe themselves. They roll around in it and flap their wings and get the dust under their feathers, which helps deter mites, and it is important for healthy and happy chickens. The next thing I want to talk about are the runs. So we're going to start with the bigger structures and then move down to the smaller ones. So the next thing I want to talk about is a run. The run needs some of the same things that the coop does, in that it needs to be sturdy. It needs to provide protection. So if you have coyotes or wild dogs or bothersome neighbor dogs close by, then after you put your chicken wire, it's important to, or before you put your chicken wire, it is important to put field fence or something that will keep the dogs out. Also, pig panels or cattle panels will also work because it's made out of heavier gauge metal, where the chicken wire is easily torn through by a determined animal. I found a good way to keep animals from digging under your fences is to put about 6 inches of your fence on the ground around your pen, so the 6 inches of it lays on the ground, and then it turns up to the vertical portion where you will be able to attach that to the fence post. So most animals that dig under the fence, they'll come to the fence and then go underneath it. And you can counter that by burying or by just putting the chicken wire on the ground, and the grass will grow up through it. It needs to be tall enough to work in. Your run, if you're going to cover the top, if you have predators from, flying predators like owls and hawks, it's important to protect the chickens from that. So also if you have flighty breeds, that's also something to think about, that they'll fly over the top and then they become easy prey for dogs or neighborhood cats even. So if your chicken pen or chicken run needs a cover over the top, then you need to think about it needs to be tall enough for you to walk in. So you can pull out a dead bird if you need to, or you can go in and clean the feeder out or shovel manure one way or the other. It needs to be tall enough to work in. So runs come in a few different categories. One is just a typical run, and you need 10 to 15 feet per bird of run space. 10 birds is 100 square feet. That's 10 feet by 10 feet. It's not a very big run, but that is a minimum. You need 10 or 15, so 100 to 150 square feet for 10 birds. Another type of run is a paddock, and a paddock is a pen that the chickens can run into, but that they can be excluded from. So for instance, one of our paddocks is our garden. At the end of the season, after everything's been harvested, then I cover the perennials with a bucket or something that the chickens can't knock over easily. And I open up a little door, it's about 12 inches by 12 inches, wire, and I open it up and the chickens come in and they eat all of our tomatoes, and they scratch through and eat all the parasites or all the bugs that have become accustomed to living in our garden over the summer, and they really clean house really well. Then when they've done their damage, I take them, and during the night after they've gone to roost, I just close the door and wire it shut, and then they're out of it until next time I want to let them in there. Another paddock that we have off ours is our berry patch, and we can open the door to that, and chickens can run in and go through the berry bushes and pick the fallen fruit and the bugs, and they spread their manure all over their fertilizer all over the berry patch. And then and I keep that open all winter long, and then before the berries start to set, I exclude them from that so that they don't eat any of the berries before we can get to them. Then the summer is usually the semi-free range time, and we let them out on the weekends and in the evenings when we can kind of be around to make sure that nothing gets to them. Another way you can do a run system is with rotational grazing. You can make a chicken tractor or a movable chicken coop that you put inside of an electric fence or inside of panels or something that you can have someone that can help you lift them and move them and put them into another spot so the chickens can get the greens. It's very important that they get green vegetation. It's important for their digestion and important for their health and their vitamin intake. So those are the two main big parts of a chicken coop and run. The chicken housing is the coop is the house and the run is the yard. Now inside the coop there are a couple things, mainly roosts and nesting boxes. In McMurray Hatchery blog, the McMurray Hatchery, they have a blog that has a lot of good resources on all sorts of things about chickens, but they're talking about how to put your roosts inside the pen, how high to put them and how wide apart to place them, and they had some really good points there. One point is make sure that your roosts are at least 12 inches apart from each other. That way that the chickens don't defecate on the chicken below them, or next. If they're too close, then the chicken might have its head down and the other chicken might be pooping on it. So you want to make sure that your roosts are at least 12 inches apart. There needs to be between 8 and 10 inches or up to 12 inches of roost space per bird. The bigger breeds will need more room, the smaller breeds will need less room. It's important in placement that your roosts are not above your laying boxes or your nesting boxes. I've had some bad experiences with putting the roosts over the laying boxes or at the same height as the laying boxes, because I thought it would be easier to get them from up above, and in fact it just made a bigger mess, and I'll explain why. Some of the materials that you can use for your nest or for your roosts are 2x4s, and you just put them so the narrow end is up. That's what I use. It's sturdy and it seems to be friendly to their feet. You could also use sticks or thick branches if you want to go for a natural sort of look. Also, you could take a pallet and break out every other slat, or enough slats to where there's enough room between them that the chickens can roost on top or on the slats. I suggest flipping it over where it usually only has 3 slats. Use that for the nest. Or roosts. You can lean it up against the wall, and then they can sit on those. Now keep in mind that they poop all night long, so it'll probably get lots of poop on it, and that's just something you need to be aware of and take care of. So that might not be the best option. Okay, so we're going to talk now about nesting boxes. So there's a few things that you need to think about with your nesting boxes. One, they need to be dry. Again, I know we live here in the Pacific Northwest, so a lot of my stuff says it's important to be dry, but it is. Dry and clean are some of the most important things for these chickens. They need to be cooked.